is the civil society. And to effectively engage CSOs, one must be familiar with the sector. Our second session aims to deepen our understanding of the civil society organizations. To present the results of the 2016 Philippine CSO Sustainability Index Report, we have with us the Acting Executive Director of the Caucus of Development NGO Networks, or CODE NGO. Prior to that, she has been the network's program specialist for membership from 2006 to 2013 and Deputy Executive Director from 2013 to 2017. CODE NGO is the largest coalition of CSOs in the country, representing 12 networks or 1,600 NGOs, people's organizations, and cooperatives. CODE NGO is also the non-government secretariat of the Philippine OGP since 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Ms. Rosel Rasay.
Good afternoon po sa ating lahat. Maayong hapon. Maayong hapon kay narito pa yata yung mga bigati natin mga bisita, Yusek Ostir Panadero, Asek Marlon Bruto, Asek Chris Ablan, mga kaibigan natin sa iba-ibang national government agencies from the central office and also from the regional offices, Region 6 and 7. Ang ating mga mayors from Region 6 and 7, business sector, public sector unions, mga kasamahan ko sa non-government institutions, CSOs, academe, magandang hapon. Magandang hapon din kay Jenna Diallo, our guest from USAID. Good afternoon. We really wanted to take advantage of this venue, this opportunity to present to you this report because we wanted to wanted you to know the civil society sector better, and we thought of the way of doing that by sharing with you the recent results of the CSO, Civil Society Organization Sustainability Index Philippines. CODE NGO has been doing this study for USAID. This is a report that is being produced by USAID, and this is a study that is being done in 75 countries around the world. And at the global level, the implementing partner is the Management Systems International. At the Philippine level, ang CODE NGO po ang implementing partner. And the report for Asia, for example, just started in 2014. And so we'd like to share with you a comparative ratings of the Philippine CSO sector for the past 3 years, mainly to introduce to you who we are and what we do, and how we can partner, how we can partner for open government and participatory governance. So a bit of history of the CSO Sustainability Index. This report actually was initiated by USAID in 1997. The USAID created the methodology and launched it first in Eastern Europe and Eurasia to measure the progress of civil society development, of the development of the sector itself. You will recall that around this time, nag-break yung Berlin Wall. And so they wanted to study the profile, characteristics of CSOs in that part of the world. And in 2009, they expanded the study to Africa. In 2011, they introduced this to the Middle East and North Africa, and they changed the name to clarify the coverage of the study. You would recall naman na around 2011, ito yung Arab Springs. And they also wanted to study the profile of civil society in that part of the world. And it's mainly being used to measure programming success by USAID as well as other donors. And it's also being used by civil society sector to advocate for funding for civil society from both US and European sources. And in 2014, more recently, they introduced the study to Asia. And there are 7 Asian countries that have been participating since 2014 in this study. The CSOSI measures 7 dimensions of civil society sustainability. So when we speak of sustainability of civil society, we don't talk only of financial sustainability. Sustainability has these 7 perspectives or dimensions: legal environment, organizational capacity, financial viability, advocacy, service provision, infrastructure, and public image. What's the scoring process of this methodology? What we do is that we convene a panel of experts from the sector, around 8 to 10, carefully selected individuals to ensure a balanced representation of perspectives about CSOs, urban versus rural NGO, national versus local, small and big NGOs, advocacy versus service provision, service delivery, to represent different types of NGOs by sectors and even across the 7 dimensions of sustainability. And the panel reviews the sector, looks at the indicators of the 7 dimensions, and on a consensus, they rate the sector on each of these dimensions. And they provide the justification or the explanation for the rating. And the CSOSI report, a country report, is being reviewed by an editorial committee sa headquarters ng USAID with representatives from MSI, Management Systems International, ICNL, or the International Center for Nonprofit Law, and definitely USAID. And this is how the scoring system looks like. A score of 1 represents the highest level of sustainability in each of these dimensions, and a score of 7, the lowest level of sustainability. And scores are clustered into 3 stages. If you get a score of 1 to 3, your status is sustainability enhanced. 3.1 to 5, sustainability evolving. And 5.1 to 7, your sustainability is impeded. So it looks at not at the individual organizations, but the entire civil society sector. This is the results for the 2016 CSO Sustainability Index in Asia. You will see that Philippines is still the highest scorer in terms of sustainability in 7 Asian countries that participate in the study. But you will notice that all of the Asian countries participating in the study are in the sustainability evolving category. And this is ranked according to from highest to lowest score. This is our score for the Philippines. 2016 CSO Sustainability Index Philippines. On the average, we have a score of 3.3 or sustainability evolving overall. No? And for each of the dimensions covered, this is how we scored. You will notice that we are highest in terms of infrastructure. The infrastructure present among the civil society sector. You may be aware that many of us form coalitions, associations, networks that are established. So that's a indicator of sustainability in terms of infrastructure for civil society. But we're lowest in terms of financial viability. You'll see that we only get a rating of 4. But later on in the succeeding slides, I'll present to you the trend of, throughout the past 3 years that we've been participating in this study. Of course, our context, the CSOs in the Philippines context, looks like this. There are about 279,499 registered CSOs in the country. It talks only of registered CSOs, but definitely there are other CSOs which are informally operating because it's protected in our constitution, no? Yung freedom of association. So hindi naman necessary for NGOs to register. It becomes important when you access funds or you partner with other institutions, when you enter into MOA or contracts with other institutions, then registration becomes important. So actually, this figure represents only the registered ones in the four primary registering authorities or agencies, no? And of course, meron pang mga secondary registration yung mga NGOs na to, no? Apart from being registered, for example, in SEC, if you have a program about social welfare, you also get a secondary registration with DSWD and so forth. But our primary registering authorities are the SEC for non-stock non-profit, the CDA for cooperatives, HLURB for Homeowners Association, and DOLE for workers' unions and associations. And these are the latest figures that we got from these agencies. And this is how our ratings went for the past 3 years. So generally the trend is still the same. We're still highest in terms of infrastructure and also service provision. And we are lowest in terms of financial viability. But we can look at the trend in each dimension in the succeeding slides. For example, if we look at, this is the overall rating, sustainability, overall CSO sustainability at 3.3. Again, we're at the sustainability evolving category. It has remained the same throughout the past 3 years. And in our recent report, these are the items that we cited. No, bayanihan is deeply ingrained in the Philippine culture, and that's very apparent also, especially among civil society organizations in the Philippines, being managed or being supported by volunteers. Many are really being supported by volunteers. Government is fairly open to CSOs, although democratic space has expanded or constricted slightly depending on political dynamics. And even across agencies, it may differ. Some heads of agencies are really very open with engaging with CSOs. Others may not be not so open. And also, there are also varying level of engagement at the local government units as well. For 2016, again, may I highlight that the reports here represent the year 2016. So, medyo noong nakaraang panahon pa yon. We're actually scheduling usually these kinds of report are parang post facto, no? We are producing the report after that year. So some situations may have changed already, but these reflect the findings in 2016. So change in leadership became a very important influencer of actions for the sector kasi nga nag-election tayo, no? Nagpalit ang leadership, and the current leadership led. The change in leadership led to review of some previous administration's programs. So you must have noticed that as well. In terms of financial viability, there's continuing increase in donor and international community support, particularly for humanitarian and disaster recovery for the sector. But now this year, in 2016, it's more focused on training and sustainability. However, despite that fact that there are more support for humanitarian response actions, financial viability is still weak. Many CSOs are still project dependent, so they operate if they have project funds. They would constrict if there are no project funds. In terms of legal environment, this is the first dimension. You can see that there's a declining trend in terms of our rating. That's the the sensing of the CSO experts when they look at these dimensions. You can see there we put in plus points for positive points for the sector and minus points for some areas of concern or issues. We have a very supportive legal framework. 1987 Constitution really acknowledges the role of civil society. The 1991 Local Government Code provides for avenues for participation at all levels of local governance for civil society. They are part of councils from the local to national level. Primary registration is also very easy. The cost for registering a nonprofit is low. However, registration offices in the regions are absent. For example, SEC offices are mainly in the regions only. So if you are from a faraway municipality, you have to go to the regional office to get your foundation or NGO registered. This year also, there have been, in 2016 also, for some CSOs, they found it more difficult to access government funds, mainly due to additional DSWD accreditation requirement at that time. And it was definitely a result of a reaction by government because of the PDAF scam. In this year also, in 2016, public statements against human rights groups who are critical of the government's approaches on curtailing illegal drugs and surge in incidents of drug-related killings. This has been cited also by the experts panel that affects the score on legal environment for the sector. And then these public statements against human rights groups were perceived as attempts to silence dissent. In terms of organizational capacity, it is known locally and even internationally to many that Philippine NGOs are known to be community-centered and they involve beneficiaries in their programming. They're also strong in constituency building. At the time, in 2016, it's centered mainly on voters' education because it was an election year. And there were, at the time also, there were many farmers' associations which started their strategic planning and organizational development initiatives, which in the past was being done only by big NGOs or networks. But at the time, there were smaller associations, people's organizations that have started to do strategic planning, reviewing their impacts as well, the impact of their work. Another positive point is that several capacity building activities for disaster risk reduction and humanitarian response also came in. There were many international supporters supporting local action, but mainly because it was the result of Yolanda and post-Yolanda events. However, NGOs are still largely project-based and could not sustain staff in the long term. Often, the staff, NGO staff like me, often work beyond their scope of work and training, and we're even using our own equipment, our phone, a laptop, for official uses. The office could not provide that for us. So parang may element lagi ng volunteering and sharing your own resources. In terms of financial viability, the plus points were as follows. CSR, corporate social responsibility, and corporate philanthropy continues to grow. And some private organizations or business groups are moving from PR, hindi lang public relation yung CSR work nila, pero towards greater social impact or inclusive business. Farmers groups are part of their products are part of their core businesses. They are the farmers are the suppliers of their products and so on and so forth. Marami tayong nakikitang ganyang cases ngayon. There was also increasing local resource mobilization among community-based organizations, CBOs, community-based organizations, church-based groups, non-profit schools from local businesses. and they usually source it from local businesses, politicians, from PTAs, no, parents teachers associations, especially at the time, right after, especially for humanitarian action or DRR. And then there was also influx of grants for disaster response. May continuing support yun from many international groups. But we think that it's also temporary. Kasi after the disasters, wala na din yung ganong klaseng support. So some of the negative points is that still, as I've mentioned, NGOs are still largely reliant on international and local donor grants, except for cooperatives, schools, labor unions, and highly entrepreneurial CSOs that are able to find their own sources of income. And of course, a negative point around that time is the concern in the decline of international funding from EU, UN, and United States because of some pronouncements by government against these foreign country donors. But despite that fact, financial viability has been increasing the past 3 years. In terms of advocacy, we have a score of 3.3. And this was the dimension where there was a large jump downwards from three during the last 2 years to 3.3. At the time, 2016, a change in government, former CSO champions in government have either exited from service or not as vocal of CSO issues. There were also some of the NGOs also experienced challenges in coordinating with new heads of agencies. Some NGOs they need to reintroduce themselves to the new heads of agencies. And the government also started to organize its own network of supporters through Kilusang Pagbabago. Rightly or wrongly, there were perceptions that not being part of this movement means exclusion from government-provided services. Some government programs or processes around this time in 2016 were either suspended or modified. For example, the bottom-up budgeting into ADM, the PDP process, which used to involve CSOs in its planning processes, no longer involve the CSOs in these planning committees. When NEDA sought feedback from the public about the PDP, the drafts, PDP drafts, they posted it on the NEDA website and gave a deadline of 2 days for the public to comment. That was not the process before. The process before was CSOs were part of planning committees, no working committees that and can provide inputs, and these are consolidated into the PDP. And there were some reports also that some staff members in NAPSI were replaced after the change in leadership in NAPSI. In terms of service provision, our score here is 3. So we have maintained our score at 3. In terms of plus points, we cited about CSOs continuing to provide highly diverse range of goods and services. For example, one of our expert panel members said that magsabi ka ng isang problema sa Pilipinas o isang issue, may isang NGO na nagtatrabaho related to that program or project. So CSOs are really very diverse and provide very diverse services. Another plus point is that CSO goods and services generally respond to the needs of their communities. For this year, ang masasite nating example, this became this increase, especially in the humanitarian sector. Some weak points, there's growing need for legal services for marginalized groups, particularly for poor families with members killed in the illegal drugs war. And then, cost recovery for CSO services remain weak kasi nga sanay yung mga CSOs na they receive donation, they give their services for free. But it's not sustainable. So CSOs must also learn how to sustain their program through fees, no, through reasonable fees. But very few NGOs are able to do that. And then there was also, at that time in 2016, there was also a concern that government will act unfavorably toward human rights groups and CSO supportive of previous administration's programs or critical of the illegal drug war program of the government. In terms of infrastructure, our score here is 2.9. This is the area where we have the highest score. It has been increasing the past 3 years, no, from 3 to 2.9. From 3 in 2014 to 2.9 in 2015 and 2016. Some plus points. There's continued increase in cross-sectoral partnerships with business, church, and academic sectors, mainly for disaster response and poverty reduction program. So I think for this year, we can cite the OGP itself as an example of this collaboration among various sectors. No? Our partnership go beyond the civil society sector, and it's starting to, the partnerships between sectors are starting to strengthen as well. There's also, we can also cite a number of CSO networks and associations which continue to provide training, advocacy platforms, and other services for their members. There's also a continued support for locally identified projects by local funding institutions. Some local funding institutions, some of the NGOs are not really dependent on international funding kasi meron mga local funding institutions like Peace and Equity Foundation, Foundation for Sustainable Societies, Foundation for Philippine Environment, etc. And then, coalition building continued to grow. Dapat plus pala yan. Mali yung nasa slide. Plus point yung coalition building continued to grow. For example, the Zero Extreme Poverty 2030 for Sustainable Development. So SDGs ang pinagsasamahan at kinikilusan ng Zero Extreme Poverty Movement. Pagsasama yan ng maraming NGOs at may kapartner ng mga LGUs. Balik Lokal, isang nabuo rin na coalition around 2016 and they are campaigning for locally led humanitarian response. And then at that year also, nabubuo din yung coalition against the burial of Marcos in the libingan ng mga bayani. In terms of public image, this is the last dimension. In terms of public image, yung mga plus points natin dyan, the negative publicity about PDAF and the Napoles case subsided a bit during this year. Media, particularly media and the donors, became more discerning between legitimate and fake NGOs. No? So as you know, fake naman yung mga Napoles NGOs. Another plus, however, so ibang kwento yung 2017. Another plus point is that CSO work continued to figure prominently in DRR, disaster risk reduction programs and humanitarian response, post-Yolanda. Another plus point is that CSO started to use Facebook and social media to promote their work and causes at low cost. We're starting to learn how to use social media. Pero siguro ibang kwento rin yung 2017 about fake news and all that. But we're talking of 2016, of course. And then some minus points are in this area. No? At this time, because 2016 was an election year, media focused on national and local elections. So there was not much coverage about what NGOs are doing. And then the Philippine Trust Index, the EON Stakeholders Forum, produced this study annually since 2012 until 2015. And that CSOs and business continue to be the least trusted institutions. We're thinking that mainly it's because of, for CSOs, it's mainly because of the Napoles cases, which are fake NGOs. And then in terms of mechanisms for code of conduct and certification for the sector, they've yet to spread to broader sector. Very few, still very few, a small segment of civil society organizations and networks continue to promote Philippine that certification by the Philippine Council for NGO Certification, and so forth. But in terms of public image, it has been increasing since the last 3 years. And this is how the score of the 7 participating Asian countries look like in the 2016 CSO Sustainability Index. So you can see the country featured and their score in each of the 7 dimensions. You will see there that we are highest in all the dimensions except for highest among the 7 countries in all dimensions except for, I think, organizational capacity. You will see there that the Philippines is 3.4, Bangladesh is 3.2. Kasi di ba sila yung may BRAC, yung malaking NGO na para na siyang gobyerno in terms of services and resources. At sa kanila din galing yung Grameen Bank idea, ay Grameen concept. So you will see na naungusan tayo ng Bangladesh in that area. But in all other areas, the Philippines has the highest score among these 7 countries. Because this is the first time we're presenting this report to the public, kasi this has just been approved, no? So, so the feedback, so we haven't had any feedback yet on this report. You are the first to hear about the results of this report, 2016 report. But these were the feedback on the earlier reports that we did. And I think they are still very valid and it's still worth pursuing all the recommendations and hearing this feedback. For example, these were the feedback in the 2015 report. There was an impression that the Philippine CSOs tend to underrate themselves, particularly for legal environment. Because other partners, for example, the USAID itself, thought that the Philippine sector is known to be vibrant. Participation happens at all levels. It could have, we could have rated 2 or 1, but that was 2015. These comments. There was disparity between small and big NGOs cited in the financial viability dimension. It will be useful if this finding can be measured in terms of Gini coefficient or similar measurement within the sector. We don't know yet how to produce that kind of measurement, but we'll definitely try to look at such aspects, no, of clarifying the variance between big and small NGOs and see how we can support more local and smaller organizations for their sustainability. Workers' unions seem to be not represented in the study, so it was suggested that in the next experts panel meeting, we invite someone from the labor unions. We're actually scheduling the 2017 meeting of the panel this February. The panelists and the feedback from stakeholders also mentioned that we need to amplify more the local perspectives or facilitate this same process for local organizations. That's the reason why we wanted to present, to take advantage of this avenue, to send this to send this report to you, and so that you can also look at the NGOs in your locality and see whether this also reflect their situation and give that feedback to them or to us, so we can plug them in this study. Then it was also recommended that we should review the indicators. Are they comprehensive enough, etc. So in fact, the implementers have started to review the methodology and the system as well. So there will be some changes in the 2017 methodology in producing this report. Some ways forward, as we see it, as the sector see it. We were advised to look at the gaps in each dimension as opportunities for the sector to develop programs or actions to address these gaps. For example, we need to explore ways for cost recovery and diversifying income sources to support our programs. We need to learn to communicate our work more effectively, and to partner with media so that more people can learn more about what NGOs are doing. Yeah, the 2014 Philippine Trust Index, they identified the drivers of trust for CSOs. Naalala nyo, binanggit ko kanina na mababa ang trust sa NGOs. And these are the drivers of trust. Incorruptibility, because we demand transparency with government, we must also be able to demonstrate that we are transparent in our operations, participatory in our operations. So yun. And that they're saying we should be free from political interest, we should have competent leaders, provide jobs and livelihood, and that we should communicate and listen more. So those were the feedback, and we're picking up on those recommendations as well. It was also recommended to us that we use the areas where the sector is strongest. We are strongest in the area of advocacy and service provision and infrastructure, and we can use this as leverage to contribute to financial viability where we are weakest, where the sector is weakest. So we have to study our best practices, focus on a few areas instead of stretching ourselves too thinly on many programs and projects, focus on where we are good at, and look at our value-adding services and programs and set up our structures around it. So those were some feedback. Definitely, we would want to some more about the ways forward. It was suggested that we should disseminate this report to a wider audience, and that's the reason why we're bringing it here at the OGP Roadshow. We'll also present the results in our succeeding sessions of the OGP around the country. And to form advocacy groups to promote policies addressing the sustainability of the civil society sector. And some of these other very specific recommendations about infrastructure for peer learning, tapping opportunities from other sectors like business, academia, and government, and involving them, the other sectors, to volunteer for NGO work as well. So to invite you to look at the nearest NGO, neighborhood NGO, and see how you can also volunteer your services. And then there's one important recommendation also on investing in the youth, no? And involving them in our work, because they will contribute to the sustainability of our programs if the youth are part of our work. Especially, for example, for the SDGs, this is a 15-year plan. Marami sa atin, wala na after 15 years. Pero yung youth, if we start involving them now, they'll still be there to campaign for the SDGs, for example. So that was our report, and we are sharing with you the copy of the slides I presented just now, and even the full report. You can access them at the Google Drive that the Secretariat is announcing. So we'll be happy to hear your feedback. You can email us at caucus@code-ngo.org for any question or feedback. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you, Rosel. Moving on, we still have coffee. Some of us are already, sleepy. Our next session, we will tackle a roadmap to improving local governance. One of the commitments in the OGP National Action Plan that gained local traction and even international recognition is the program that provided support to local government units. We know it in various names. Formerly, bottom-up budgeting, grassroots participatory budgeting, and currently, we call it the Assistance to Disadvantaged Municipalities, or ADM. To inform us on the roadmap to improving local governance, we have with us the program manager of the Assistance to Disadvantaged Municipalities program of the Department of Interior and Local Government. A round of applause, please, to Mr. Richard Villacorte.
Maayong buntag sa tanan. Good after. Maayong hapon day. Good afternoon to all. Unang-una, we're pleased to be here in Bacolod, and this is the first leg of the OGP Regional Forum. And as far as my program is concerned, the one that I am working on at the DILG, we're using the Open Government Partnership as a forum wherein we can showcase the program to as many stakeholders as possible. That's why we're here. That's why we are verily intertwined with the activities of the Open Government Partnership, because we use the OGP as a platform to get more stakeholder support for the program that we're running. Okay. So they said my program is called Assistance to Disadvantaged Municipalities. That is the 2017 title of the GAA item, ADM. But in 2018, it's no longer called ADM. There is no more disadvantage. So we now simply call it Local Government Support Fund Assistance to Municipalities. There is also another Local Government Support Fund Assistance to Provinces and another Local Government Support Fund Assistance to Cities. But what we are, what I will be speaking about is the Assistance to Municipalities program. Okay, so the Assistance to Municipalities program, we are framing the program to be, number one, it should be time-bounded. So we're looking at a 5 years governance roadmap that should end in 2022 in time of the political transition in the Philippines. So we don't want the program to go beyond the president's term. So the next president should come up with another program that will take on from the learnings of the previous program. Okay. So the desire that the program is wanting is to produce empowered, responsible, and responsive LGUs. So this is a very conceptual thing. What is a responsive LGU? Okay? So alam natin, for example, a responsive LGU is an LGU who is able to deliver to the constituency the requirements in times of, for example, disaster. So, halimbawa, si Albay, ngayon, nandyan si Mayon. So, the LGU must be able to deliver what it should deliver to the constituency in times of those needs. Okay. So, what is a responsible LGU? A responsible LGU is one which is able to abide with the set rules and regulations pertaining to local government. So, ang Biblia natin dyan, si Local Government Code. So, pinag-uusapan na dyan, are you following do you have a functional local development council? Do you have a sound comprehensive development plan? So, ito na yung tools for a municipality to be able to manage its resources in a very intelligent manner. What is an empowered LGU? Okay. So, alam natin na in most LGUs in the past, sasabihin ng mayor, ayoko makinig sa mga CSO kasi hindi naman kayo nanalo dyan. Okay? This is anecdotal. May mga mayors tayo dito. So, merong ganyan. May mga CSO sa isang bayan na tumatakbo tapos pag natalo, magiging opponent sila ni Mayor, tapos pagka sinuwerte, pumapasok sila doon sa Local Development Council at doon sila magkakaroon ng sort of friction. Okay. So this is a scenario that is happening on the ground, and we are trying to sort of make some interventions, because what we are saying is that there should be constructive engagement between the leadership of the municipality as well as the people as represented by the civil society organization. So in short, there should be an LGU-CSO conversation at the bottom. Okay. So That's so an LGU who is able to listen to each constituency by way of being participatory is an example of an empowered LGU. Okay, so next slide. So the program, we have a lot of partner organizations and we are doubling into many aspects. Itong nakasulat po dito lahat, these are all the things that we do in the program that engages the CSOs at different stages and at different levels. Okay. So we partner with the Participatory Governance Cluster, and then what we are pushing within the program is the full implementation of CSO accreditation per General Appropriations Act Section 67. That's GAA 2018. So ang pinupush namin dyan is, one, the Department of Interior and Local Government will have a policy of engaging CSOs and accrediting CSOs to become partners to DILG activities. So in the past, circa 2015, 2016, the accreditation process of the General Appropriations Act rules and regulation is limited to the DSWD. Okay? But in 2017 and in 2018, we have ushered in a liberalized way of accrediting CSOs and NGOs. So dapat matuwa yung mga kapwa natin NGOs kasi nawala na yung maraming requirements sa DSWD. So each department right now is allowed already to engage CSOs using its own department policy. So the DILG is pushing for a department policy wherein if i-frame na natin kung paano si DILG makikipag-partner kay CSO at the municipal level, at the provincial level, at the regional level, and at the national level. So in the different levels, iba-ibang accreditation dati ang ginagawa. So ngayon, for one, we are pushing for a policy wherein the accreditation will honor the LGU accreditation as well. So pag accredited ni Mayor, yung isang CSO, pwede na siya makipag-partner kay MLGOO para sa kung ano paman na DILG activity at the municipal level. And that goes to the provincial level as well as to the regional level. Okay. So, with the Local Government Academy, we are also capacitating the LDCs and CSOs as mechanisms for local development. Okay. So since the Local Government Code was passed, actually hindi pa talaga tayo nakapagpa-meeting, Ma'am Shel, no, ng mga members ng local special bodies. Never in the history na nagpa-meeting tayo na run by the national government, attended by the members of the local special body. So this year in 2018, we have set aside some funds through the Local Government Academy. We will focus on the 310 local government units na hindi pumasa doon sa minimum requirements of local development councils. So there are 310 of the 1,590 LGUs na hindi nakamit ng minimum requirements of the local government code. So ano yung indicators na yon? These are yung pagkakaroon ng secretariat, pagkakaroon ng plans, pagkakaroon ng meetings. There are 6 indicators there. If they fail in one of the indicators, then they fail in the local development council functionality test. Okay. So kung ganon, bibigyan natin sila ng capacitating interventions through the Local Government Academy. This should happen within the next 3 to 6 months, maybe second and third quarter of the year. So yung mga CSOs doon sa mga bayan na yon, dapat abangan natin at tayo'y lumahok doon sa mga activities na yon because this will be an enhancement of the local development councils that is already existing. Okay. Next is we have a partnership with the United Nations Development Program we are developing a citizens feedback through Development Live online platform. Okay. So meron tayong mga mayors dito. Yung ADM 2017 natin ngayon, Mayor, nire-report ninyo sa DILG, si DILG nire-report sa DBM, nire-report sa Congress. Okay. But in the GAA 2018, sinasabi doon, ang dapat mag-report yung nakatanggap ng pera. So kayo yun, the LGUs. Okay. So we are now developing an online platform, parang full disclosure portal natin. It's an app. Si LGU, kayo ang magre-report doon ng performance natin doon sa ating ADM project implementation. Hindi na si DILG. Okay? So kayo diretso ang magre-report doon, tapos meron tayong pamamaraan para sa vetting process. Okay. So in short, yung report na yun is open. So that means makikita na siya all the way to the Senate, all the way to Congress. So that already will suffice as to the reportorial requirements of the local government units who are recipients of the local government support fund. So we will roll out the ADM DevLive by second quarter of this year. No? Magbi-beta test kami ngayong February, and hopefully after that, we will train all the LGU personnel who will be doing the reporting scheme doon sa platform. Sa website yan i-report ng bawat LGU na nakatanggap ng LGSF Assistance to Municipalities Fund. Okay. And then, we are also developing a citizen-based project monitoring scheme. Okay. Kasi hindi naman lahat, for example, in ADM 2017, there are 1,373 municipalities covered, covering 4,440 projects. Ang nangyari dyan is hindi natin lahat makikita yung 4,440 projects. So we're developing community-based monitoring approach using CSOs at the field level. Okay. So the model that we are adopting is the model of the citizen, what's CCAGG? Concerned Citizens of Abra for Good Government. Okay. CCAGG. Okay. So the CCAGG has been operating in Abra for the longest time, since 1990s. And they have developed a very good tool wherein their CSOs in Abra is able to help the DPWH, the DepEd, as well as the DILG implement the projects and programs na merong CSO component. So we are replicating in 2018 in 6 pilot provinces to add to Abra. Okay. So the pilot provinces is Negros Oriental and Negros Occidental, Surigao del Sur and Surigao del Norte, and Laguna and Quezon. So ito yung additional provinces na i-operationalize natin yung Abra experience on community-based monitoring na talagang organized, structured, pero community-based at hindi siya government-based. Okay. So ito yung feedback mechanism natin para sa ating programa na pinapatupad ng mga local government units. And the next engagement that our program is pushing is today we have engagements with UP Visayas here in Iloilo and Bicol State University in Region 5 to address a very peculiar data that says na, for example, in Region 6, 72% of local government units do not have an updated comprehensive development plan. Okay? And that is higher in Bicol. That is why we're focusing on these two regions, because we would like that in the next 3 years, all municipalities will have an updated comprehensive development plan. Nang sa ganon, gaganda rin yung inyong local development investment program. Nang sa ganon, ay magiging maayos yung inyong budgeting, both ng inyong local resources, ng inyong IRA, at saka yung resources na galing sa national government. So in order to converge local planning and national planning, kailangan magsimula tayo doon sa local planning, which is the comprehensive and CLUP planning process at the municipal level. So we're pushing this year a continuation of the very codal and statutory provision that requires that there should be local plans in all municipalities, cities, and provinces. Okay. So ito ay pagpapatupad sa isang napakatagal ng rules and regulation na hindi natin masyadong pinapakinggan at ginagawa. But this time, we are pushing it so that everyone will really have it, and then we make it as a requirement later for the implementation of our projects and programs funded by the national government. Okay. So the next, balik ka pa doon, may isa pa. DILG-BLGS, we have plans that for 2019, and we are already doing the policy iteration this year, na all LGUs covered by the assistance to municipalities will have a functioning citizen feedback mechanism using the CSIS or Citizen Satisfaction Index system that DILG has been doing in selected cities and municipalities for the past 3 years. We will be upscaling the CSIS program to cover all municipalities in 2019. Okay. So, with all of these engagements with CSOs, we are hoping that the implementation of the projects and programs will have a high integrity and that everyone will feel assured that the monies being spent in the program is being put to good use. Next slide, please. Meron pa ba? Okay. So, ito yung nakasulat ngayon sa ating special provision sa General Appropriations Act for 2017. At ito ang aming mantra sa aming Project Management Office. We will make sure that all local development councils are fully functional and shall comply with the requirements provided in the Local Government Code. And ensuring that all local development investment programs of the municipalities are aligned with the results matrices of the Philippine Development Plan. So ito yung pinaka-mantra ng ating General Appropriations Act, which we are already trying to do. This is part of the movement that we are pushing in all the LGUs covered by the program. So, next slide. Okay. This is the 5-year governance roadmap. Okay. So, ito yung nakikita natin yung nasa itim. Ito yung mga problema na nakikita natin sa ground. Okay. Ang sinasabi dyan yung sa number 1, na ang local development ng local development council ng bawat bayan ay merong elite capture. Ang accusation nila ay mga tuta man yan ni Mayor lahat o mga bata-bata ni Mayor lahat. Okay? So hindi siya open, hindi siya transparent. So parang ano siya, parang organisasyon siya na makaano. So in fact, we have a study wherein pag si Mayor nagpapatawag ng Local Development Council, yung mga CSO na hindi kaparti or hindi kaalyado ni Mayor, hindi umaattend doon sa Local Development Council. Hindi dahil hindi sila iniimbitahan ni Mayor, kundi dahil parang nakikita nila yun na, ay hindi namin susuportahan yan kasi hindi amin yan. Parang ganon. Okay? So there's a study that was conducted in 2015 that shows that kind of situation on the ground. Okay. So the assumption before is local development councils are not functional. So ang sabi natin in 2017, last year, we are going to make it functional. Okay? So the first thing that we did is we make a thorough assessment of the local development councils in the country through the Seal of Good Local Governance Assessment. So through the SGLG assessment, we were able to assess the functionality of each of the LDCs. So, in short, for example, si Mayor, if you are an SGLG awardee, part of your being awardee is you have a functional LDC. You cannot be an SGLG awardee if you don't have a functional LDC in your municipality. So, yan yung ano dyan, yan yung connect. Okay. Now, for 2018, we would like to pay attention thoroughly to improving the quality of the local development investment program. Again, to the CSOs and to the local chief executives who are here, for the longest time, we're looking at the LDIP as a document which is for compliance, for submission. Natatawa si Mayor. For compliance, for submission. Okay? It can be changed at will. Pwedeng baguhin ni MPDC kasi utos ni Mayor. pwedeng dagdagan, pwedeng bawasan. Okay. Now we're putting emphasis to the LDIP, to the sanctity of the LDIP. Number one, the LDIP must be a product of LDC authorization. Meaning, dapat sinecure yung authorization ng Local Development Council na ito yung LDIP ng isang bayan. Tinitingnan na po natin yan ngayon very, very seriously. Both the DBM and the DILG. We are already going into the action of making sure that the LDIPs are no longer just called as compliance documents. And when you say that it is a good LDIP, dapat may tatak CSO yun. Kasi dapat si CSO kasama sa proseso ng pag-approve ng Local Development Investment Program. So pag maganda ang LDIP na sinalihan ni CSO sa pag-formulate, so ang assumption natin is maganda ang plano ng bayan at sila ay nagkakasundo na iisa ang direksyon nila. Okay. Now, the next aspect that we would like to pay attention to, and again, this is for the mayors, is we would like in the future to institutionalize good practices in making full service delivery system at the municipal level. Example, sa BUB experience natin, sabi nila walang pera. Binigyan ng pera. However, it took 2 years, 3 years before the project is implemented. Why? For so many reasons, nagtuturuan si National Agency at si LGU at si CSO. But the main problem is that walang nagmamando doon sa LGU para gawin ang mga project. So in short, we are hoping that in the future, we will be able to develop some sense of structures at the municipal level wherein we can develop, dedicate this group of people at the municipal level to push for project implementation. For example, si ADM 2017, towards the end of December in 2017, our delivery rate stands at something like 46%. That is a very big improvement from the BUB. Now, after 1 year, you are at 10%. Okay. But 46% is still not acceptable. We would like to make it 100% within the year, especially so that in the budget reform bill program that DBM is pushing, tomorrow it will be discussed, the monies that is allocated by Congress will only be spent within the year. No more 2-year fund validity. This is because we all want the money to rotate. Na pag pinalagay mo dyan sa budget, dapat nagagastos ka agad. Why? Kasi pag hindi nagastos, ang natuwa lang yan si Land Bank. Kasi malaki yung kanyang deposit. Pero hindi natutuwa yung constituency because they were not able to enjoy the benefits of the project when it is completed. So, budget spending is very much the rule of the day nowadays. Kailangan mabilis tayong gumastos ng pera ng gobyerno. Okay. So, in order to do that, we must be able to develop within the municipal level a capacity to make projects be implemented in a timely manner, in a quality manner. Okay? Hindi timely, mabilis, pero hindi nagbidding. Ay, nako, baka ma-ombudsman tayo niyan. Dapat timely, mabilis, pero sinusunod natin lahat ng regulasyon ng procurement law at saka ng COA rules and regulation. Okay. Now, the next item that we are looking at, and we are very excited this year is, we now know na doon sa baba, barangay to municipality, municipality to provincial, provincial to regional, regional to national, there is such a thing as, ang tawag ng mga konsultan dyan is, hyper-fragmentation of plans. Ano po yan? Okay. Si Mayor may comprehensive development plan. Pero ang kanyang comprehensive development plan, pang Mayor, pang munisipyo. Hindi niya kinonsider yung pangangailangan ni barangay. Okay? In similar fashion, we see provincial development programs na bulag din sa pangangailangan ni mayor or ng LGU or ng munisipyo. Dapat ang probinsya, yung kanyang plano is a mix of the provincial vision and mission, yung kanyang needs assessment, plus the needs assessment of the different component municipalities. Hindi pa nagkikita yung barangay to municipality, municipality to provincial, and so much more, provincial to regional, to the RDC, and RDC to the national. So in short, ang tanong dyan sa Senado, taon-taon, pag nagbabudget hearing, ang sabi nila, how local is the national budget? Okay, alam natin yung stories dito. May mga project sa gobyerno na dinadala sa isang munisipyo na hindi naman kailangan ng munisipyo or hindi nila hiningi or hindi nila alam. So merong mga anecdotes na ganyan na may pangyayari. So we are now paying attention so that this kind of situation wherein the national budget is spending for monies that are not actually needed by as expressed by the local government units, mababawasan natin yung gap. Dapat, as much as possible, the national budget is spending for what is being framed in the local plans as developed in the municipal and provincial levels. Okay. So hopefully, by the issuance later of by the issuance of the Department of Budget Management of the National Budget Memorandum 129, sinasabi dyan na dapat lahat ng agency regional offices must conform to Section 305 of the local government code. Ano yung Section 305? Ano nga yun, RD? That the national plans is harmonized on the local plans. Okay. So dapat maiwasan na natin at mabawasan na lutang masyado yung plano ni national agency compared doon sa plano ni local plan. So this is now the process of national agencies consulting with the local chief executives, the local development councils, and the instrument by which the intercourse of engagements will happen is the LDIP. Dapat maayos yung LDIP para ma-appreciate ni national agency at yun ang maibato ni agency regional office sa kanyang agency central office para yun ang popondohan taon-taon ng mga agency. So, this year, this is first in the history of the local governance in the country na merong ganitong iteration na ginawa si Department of Budget Management. Hindi pa ito na i-explain in many ways, but hopefully we will be able to start this year and make a good start wherein we can now say that the national budget is based on the local plans. Meron pa ba? Wala na. Okay. So, yan lang po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Sir Richard Villacorte. At this point, we will have 2 more inputs before we proceed to the open forum. May we request ASEC Chris Ablan. ASEC Chris Ablan is Assistant Secretary of the Presidential Communications Operations Office and the Program Director of the Freedom of Information Program of the Philippines. Okay, let's wait for ASEC Ablan to come back into the hall for his presentation. Next to ASEC Ablan, we will have also ASEC Marlon Fritz Bruto, Assistant Secretary of the Performance and Projects Management Office of the Cabinet Secretary. The OCS spearheads the implementation of the 8888 hotline and the feedback mechanism of government initiated by President Duterte. 2 of our ASECs will make their brief presentations, and we will pause for an open forum before we break out into a session. Okay, so we'll proceed first with ASEC Marlon Fritz Bruto, Assistant Secretary of the Performance and Projects Management Office of the Cabinet Secretary. The OCS spearheads what I've said, the implementation of the 8888 hotline and the feedback mechanism of government initiated by President Duterte. Let us welcome ASEC Marlon Bruto.
Thank you very much, Sir Ted, for that introduction. On behalf of the Office of the Cabinet Secretary, I would like to share with you and to walk you through on 2 important topics or concepts. Now, let me start with the Participatory Governance cluster, and I will end it with the discussion regarding the quadruple 8 or the hotline by virtue of Executive Order number 6. But before I proceed, I would like to acknowledge as well the other officials of the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. I would like to start with Director Giles, Director Wendell of the OPG, Attorney Rex, who is present as well, and my staff, Rem, and of course the other members of the movement known as Kilusang Pagbabago around, which is under the supervision of the OPG or the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. Maayong hapon, maupay nakalop in Waray-Waray because I am Waray-Waray. I'm from Northern Samar. So it seems like our dialects are the same, and we can understand in such particular language. Now, gentlemen and ladies, the unfolding of the participatory governance cluster has been predicated by the campaign promise of the President. He has been going around the country and made a promise that there is a real change and making sure that the people are heard. People should be given the opportunity to air their concerns, their sentiments, so that it will become a government for the people and by the people. And even in the SONA that he made, in the first State of the Nation address that he made, he said that we should listen. He directed all the government agencies and officials that we should listen to the murmurings of the people. But the great challenge for us is that how can we do this? How can the president fulfill his promise, campaign promise, even the SONA directive that he made? So this is a challenge for all of us, not only the part of President Duterte or the national government. So President Duterte started to issue some executive orders. In fact, I would consider that as a take-off point of the Duterte administration when he issued Executive Order number 1. If you can recall, this executive order directed the Cabinet Secretary to supervise 12 agencies, including one which was issued by a memorandum by the Executive Secretary, which is the National Irrigation Authority. Now, if you look at this, the purpose of this executive order is to ensure that the efforts in poverty alleviation would be addressed by clustering all this, so coming up with a certain kind of guidance from the Cabinet Secretary. So this is one. The second that he made to answer this is the issuance of Executive Order number 6. This is the hotline, the quadruple 8, the 8888 hotline, which is a feedback mechanism for the people to be able to communicate directly to the government and to ensure that the government officials, government agencies would be aware, be conscious of their acts and even their omissions. And that the government would be able to address their concerns if these government agencies or officials will not be able to address their concerns and their complaints. And here comes Executive Order number 9. Now, if you look at the order of which, the creation of quadruple 8, but for the quadruple 8 to be properly supervised, there is the creation of the Strategic Action Response Office, the STAR, under Executive Order number 9. So, it's a calibrated approach of the President in order really to fulfill his promise for the improvement of the relationship of the people and that of the government, which is lacking probably in the previous administration. And here comes now Executive Order number 24. Executive Order number 24 is the reorganization of the cabinet cluster. Now you may think, is this new in the government? Is this new insofar as the Philippine government is concerned? It's not. This is already, there was an Executive Order number 43 issued by President Aquino. Now, the rationale for having this cabinet cluster system, wherein the participatory governance is now considered a part of it, is that if the cabinet cannot meet all the time because of the busy schedule of the President and the other secretaries, there should be a certain kind of a group to discuss on the basis of themes or a thematic discussion of issues and programs of the government without convening the cabinet. So you call that the cabinet cluster system. Now, previously in Executive Order number 43, there were 5. But in Executive Order number 24 now, after it's reorganized by President Duterte, there are already 6 clusters. All right? So why do we have to reorganize the cabinet cluster system? Because we need to respond to the certain issues and programs. The President said, let us have the build program. But what cabinet cluster will address on this? Probably there's economic cluster. But the President would have a specific cluster to do this. That's why there is a creation infrastructure cluster. And so, third slide, please. Third slide. Go up a little. Go up a little. All right. So if you look at, if you be able to read, I know you have read this Executive Order number 24. There are salient points. And to me, this is a way positive moving forward insofar as governance is concerned. Now, in Executive Order number 43, there is what you call good governance cluster, GGA cluster, Good Governance and Anti-Corruption Cluster. This has already been dissolved in EO 24, all right? But there is the creation of the participatory governance. But the good thing about the dissolution, let us not be disappointed about this, because the objectives, the principles, And the articulation of this GGAC is now considered to be, or are now considered to be cross-cutting themes in all of the clusters. Meaning to say, the President said, we have to integrate all these good governance principles in all of the clusters. Not only in GGAC, but all of the clusters. In other words, each cluster should prepare a framework wherein good governance is integrated or part of it. Otherwise, it will be a useless endeavor if all these objectives will not be considered part of the PPR or the roadmap or the objectives of this cluster system. Now, the question is, what would be the composition of the cabinet cluster? Now, there is what you call the principle of lean but mean. We do not like all the secretaries to be part of it because this is a serious organization or an assembly wherein there is really a deliberate discussion of all the issues. If you include everyone, then it may be something like a mob. So, lean but mean. Only a few departments really concerned with a certain kind of a cluster that should be included. However, we can invite resource institutions, we can invite other departments if the expertise would be needed. That's why that's part of the provision of Executive Order number 24. Now, what is also really important is that there is a prerequisite that each cluster should prepare the PPR and even the comprehensive performance and projects roadmap. What is this all about? Now, this is not simply about the creation of organization. The organization must provide something that would really be helpful in governance aspect. And so it is required that each cluster must have the roadmap. And what is this roadmap all about? These are targets. These are deliverables. These are things that this cluster should be able to intervene and to provide in order that it would help fulfill, again, the promise of the President. Now, programs, activities, and even policies with timelines, with accountable organizations, okay, and not simply limited to the output, but more on the outcomes. Meaning to say, make sure that the program that you're going to commit on the PPR should impact the people. Again, we have to remember, the beneficiary or the beneficiaries of all the programs of the government are not the government agencies, but the people in general. Now, again, another improvement is the creation of the CCSS, the Cabinet Clusters System Secretariat. Now it's also lodged before the Office of the Cabinet Secretary to ensure that there will be no duplication of the agenda setting. If this is discussed in the cabinet, it should not also be discussed in the cluster and should not be discussed in the CAS. So meaning to say, making sure that there is no waste of time in so far as understanding all these programs. Okay. So these are just some of the salient points. Next slide, please. Now, just on a glimpse, if you look at the slide, you would look at the cabinet system, wherein the participatory governance cluster is part of it. Now, what is our understanding of the cabinet? The cabinet is the highest policy body in the executive department. So these are chaired by the President, attended by all the secretaries or other heads of the offices. But when we talk about the CAS or the Cabinet Assistance System, this system is convened by the Cabinet Secretary and attended to by all the undersecretaries. The list is assistant secretaries. You have to remember, the workforce of this bureaucracy really the undersecretaries. And then I would like to acknowledge Yusik Panadero, who has been very helpful in the discussion in the CAS. To us, kung meron tayong sinabing lodi talaga yan, pet malu talaga yan, where pa. So, thank you very much, Yusik Panadero, for really being part of this transition and the realization of all the programs. He is actually the last one to speak. Every time there is a need for an undersecretary to speak, Yusik Panadero will be someone who can really look up. And so, there is the cabinet cluster system. These are chaired, the clusters are chaired by different agencies or heads of the departments. For participatory governance cluster, with the internal arrangement, this is chaired by the DILG, Secretary Anyo, and the DBM, Secretary Diokno, and the Secretariat is the DBM. So in other words, what is the purpose of the cabinet cluster system of the PGC? This is an advisory committee to the President. It is a venue for discussion, deliberation programs or projects, policy direction and redirection, consolidation, synchronization of all the programs. This is the purpose why we have the cabinet. If there is a need for a policy in the form of an executive order, there will be a recommendation from the cabinet cluster to the cabinet, and it shall be a subject of the agenda by the CAS. So this is how the cabinet system works. And each has its basis. Each has its basis. And so let's go back again. We said we have this kind of a platform, participatory governance cluster. What is really the basis for this? Is there really a basis aside from Executive Order number 43? The answer is yes. No less the Constitution provides under Section 16 of Article 13 that the rights of the people and their organizations to effective and reasonable participation at all levels of social, political, and economic decision-making shall not be abridged. Meaning, no law shall be passed to curtail the right of every Juan de la Cruz to be part of the discussion insofar as governance is concerned, insofar as the concern of the government and their concerns as well. In fact, the second paragraph of Section 16 provides that the state shall by law facilitate the establishment of an effective consultation mechanism. So there you go. And that is actually the essence of the participatory governance cluster because of the specific functions given to this particular cluster. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at, as I mentioned a while ago, from 5 to 6, each with a specific purpose, thematic in character. For example, the Human Development and Poverty Reduction cluster. It's a theme that talks about how we can do the social protection. Now, if you look at the CCOM and DRR, it's the upgraded one. Before, it's only CCOM, climate change adaptation and mitigation. But now we include disaster risk reduction. So it's an amplified version of this. So this is the presentation of the 6 clusters now under EU24. Next slide. Now, you look at this. Now, there are only 3 enumerations, but these are, they encompass really the purpose of participatory governance. Now, if you look at the first function of the cluster, to enable the public to understand, to rationalize, and to implement the programs on an area-specific based. Meaning to say, this is not a cut and paste approach or program of the government. So here is the possibility that the government would really respond to the needs of the people on the basis of the needs. So the need of Northern Samar is different from the need of Bacolod City. So why would we have to have some kind of single kind of a program when it will not in any way affect really the lives of the people of Northern Samar or the Bacolod? So we have, this is a way of saying that we have really to understand and to connect with the people for us to be able to serve them well. Otherwise, sabi pa kanina, walang kwenta. There is a program there, but it's not needed in the particular community. So it's really important to do that. Now, how do we strengthen the consultation mechanisms? Social dialogue is encouraged. This kind of dialogue is encouraged as well. Because we want you to know the programs and for you to comment. Because the government is not always correct. You have the social contract theory, right? When the people would like to entrust to the government the way they run the business. But again, at the end of the day, it's the people who really is the source of the power of the government. Sovereignty resides in the people, and all government authority emanates from them. So it's really critical that you consult the people insofar as to the direction moving forward. And of course, this is what you call a necessity as well. Now, for a mechanism to be sustainable, you have to have the enabling arrangements. One is the normative, the other one is regulatory, and the other one is regenerative. When we talk about normative enabling arrangement, meaning that there must be a law, there must be a mechanism that is approved, deliberated upon, in order to have this kind of participation. But there must be the regulatory, meaning the rules, the guidelines for participation. But the regenerative part is the third one, meaning there must be a continuing capacity building, not only of the national government, but by the local government and by the people themselves. Because how can you be able to solicit contributions from the people if they do not know what to contribute? Let's talk about CPA, the Citizens Participatory Audit. You want to be involved in this program, you must be capacitated. Otherwise, you will not be able to understand the concept of participatory audit, right? So capacity building is really part of the system. In fact, the DLG is doing that, and that is good. Okay? Awareness is the first. Second is engagement. Awareness of the programs, engagement, because this is in line with the citizens' engagement, this is in line with the citizens' empowerment, so that the people themselves will be part of making the story, and not simply being a listener or reader of the story, but be part of the story. Next slide. Now, this is the composition of the participatory governance cluster, right? So again, not all departments are included in the composition, but to me, these are really concerned agencies that will be able to help. Why is there need to have this kind of organization? Because even if you know that each department has its own mandate or program, this is not about a single department doing a program, but this should be a whole of the government approach. Meaning you have to have the convergence of all the government agencies for a certain program. Not only one, but the entire bureaucracy probably, or a certain or concerned agencies. But again, if you create the participatory governance cluster, it does not simply mean the whole of the government approach. When you involve the CSOs, particularly Section 15 of the 1987 Constitution, Article 13 as well, the CSOs, the POs, the NGOs, and Section 23 of Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution, talking about people's organization to be part of the governance. Okay, this is now what you call the whole of the nation approach. The government, CSOs, people, communities being part of the process, it's the whole of the nation approach, not simply the whole of the government approach. Next slide. Now, you have seen this before when Jan presented, when Jan made, walk us through for orientation. So if you look at Executive Order number 24, this is the schematic or the diagram on how we understand the function of the PGC. What is the goal? The goal is enhance citizens' participation. That's the challenge. What would be your strategies? Now you have to remember, local governments are the partners of the national government. Without the local government, the national government would not probably be effective in bringing the programs down to the people. So we have to sensitize the role actually of the local government in terms of delivery, effective and efficient delivery of services. But the components of this will be that what would be the area of engagement by the people? Will it be in terms of planning? Will it be in the identification of the program? Will it be in the monitoring, in the assessment? We should know, right? But at the same time, we should discuss about the levels of engagement. Would it be national only? Or would we go down to the barangay level? And what would be the spectrum? This is the term of Yusek Panadero, the spectrum of participation. Meaning, would it simply be consultation? Or would be part really of the, what you call, the empowerment side? Okay? So really, this is one thing that we should understand about the PGC. Next slide, please. Now, the framework that we are trying to articulate is that governance must be there, the national programs, and the participatory, grassroots participatory initiatives. Now, if we look at the next, what would be the nexus, if we are going to ask, what's the nexus between governance and participatory initiatives. You're talking here of citizens empowerment. You're talking here of citizens engagement. Meaning, would be the result of the combination of the governance and the initiatives by the people. What about the nexus between the governance and the national programs? Probably the whole of the government approach. And what could be the nexus between the participatory initiatives and the national programs? Probably enhanced citizens' participation, and this is what we would like to happen. But the nexus and the combination of all these areas would be that the national government, the strategy, the indicators, the outcomes of the national government must really respond to the needs of the people down. Meaning the funds to be given by the national government must be responsive to what the people want in their respective communities, instead of funding programs which are not actually important, related to these communities. So we need this kind of arrangement. So this is the way we should understand this. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned about the PPR, and this is a simple presentation of what PPR is all about. Again, PPR, one-year program, activities with timelines, with key agencies to be accountable. At the same time, what would be the outcomes? What would be the impact of these programs to the people, subject to the monitoring, process? Next slide. Now, this is the turf of the PGC, particularly the Secretariat. So we already have the phase 1 of the PPR, and then there is a continuing improvement of this. And whatever output that we will gather in this particular dialogue will be consolidated in the phase 2 of the PPR of the Participatory Governance Cluster. Next slide. Okay. So again, this was already presented by Jan a while ago. Okay. Next slide. Okay. The hotline quadruple 8. Now, the vision of this particular mechanism, this is a mechanism. This is a platform which is part of improving and enhancing people's participation. So ako po, isang mamamayan, nakatira ho ako sa isang liblib na lugar, paano ko ho irireklamo, idudulog sa aking gobyerno ang mga katiwalian ng aking mga leader, politiko sa aming bayan. So the President said, there must be an end to corruption. There must be an end to red tape. We must obviate this kind of a system in our government. And the way to do that is to make sure that the people have access to the government to complain these acts or omissions of the government officials. Now the question is, what do we expect from this? Do we expect a lot of people to complain? Or do we expect not so many? Now at the start of the discussion is that probably said, yes, we want all the people to complain. But at the end of the day, the goal is really to minimize the complaints. Because once you minimize the calls, the texts, the emails to the hotline or to the quadruple 8, it means that the government agencies or officials are already responding. If they are not, then the 8888 hotline will be flooded with all the complaints. And right now, we are doing that well, and this, the development in progress, that we want to perfect the system, but not so perfect right now, but this is one good step moving forward. Next slide. Now, just to give you an update about the 888 system, okay? For you to be able to access, at least you have 1 peso for prepaid. For the postpaid, no problem, because you have all the account unless your line will be cut. So, free for Globe and Smart, but you have 1 peso. And then this operates on a 24/7, except when it's a holiday or declared non-working day, because even Saturdays and Sundays, we have people at the center to receive your complaints and concerns. Now, how does this particular complaint will be processed? It should be done within 72 hours. Once there will be a referral from the center to the government agency, you have to remember, the 8888 is not an investigative body. The quadruple eight will not in any way address your problem immediately. The 8888 platform will simply refer the concerns of the Filipino people to the concerned agency. And the agency will be given 72 hours to take action on this. If the agency will not, within 72 hours, another letter will be issued and given to the government agency, act on this within 72 hours. Again, if the agency will not act on this, then the president will act on that without prejudice to the firing of the people in the government, if in case the president will not be satisfied. So more or less, there is what you call due process there. Given two chances, and yet you failed to perform the task and to immediately resolve that particular problem. So good thing, but we would like to improve the numbers of the agencies that we are collaborating. Okay, so 98 at the moment and counting. Next slide. Okay, so this is now the task of the quadruple eight under the star, and the lead agency is the OCS, to ensure that this particular platform would be cascaded to the local government. Why not? If mayor, for example, would have the hotline accessible to the people, why not? So in other words, this is not simply the turf of the national government, but we can localize this quadruple eight in every local government unit. And for sure, we can improve governance if this will be localized. Again, so these are the other activities of the quadruple eight. And sooner or later, with the help of the PCOO, ASIC Chris Ablan is around to ensure that all the programs of the government would be acceptable. Now, we have, in the OCS, we have already some mechanisms other than the quadruple eight. Now, we have the Biyaya ng Pagbabago, supported by this Kilusang Pagbabago. Now, probably you have heard these concepts already. The Kilusang Pagbabago, to be fair and honest with you, is a concept. This is an articulation, continuing articulation, again, of President Duterte's directive for a real change. So this is not an organization. This is not actually a political party. If people would look at it as a political party, it's not. It's a concept. It's an advocacy. In English, if you translate that, it's simply a movement for change. Tinagalog lang natin. If you look at the PDP, yung malasakit at pagbabago, Tagalog. Ito naman, para talagang tumatak sa puso ng bawat Pilipino. Ano itong movement? Ano itong kilusan? It's a kilusang for pagbabago. Kilusang pagbabago. And then, supported by Biyaya ng Pagbabago, the concept of which is that the OCS, through the OPG, Office of the Participatory Governance, would like to ensure that that people would be able to access all the programs of the government. Now, if you look at Executive Order number 1, which I mentioned a while ago, you have the PCA, you have the NFA, you have the NIA, the cooperative, the CDA. Now, if we want to access, if the people would like to access the programs of this, OPG is there to assist and to facilitate the same. So, pupunta si i-inventory yung mga programa, pagtanim ng mga coconuts, creation of cooperatives. Ito yung role ng OPG. And all these efforts are towards what we call Kilusang Pagbabago. We are all members of the Kilusang Pagbabago in this particular. It's something that we should not really misunderstand. It is something that we should be part of it, because what we are doing even today is part of a movement for change. Why are we here? Because we want something that is different. According to Yusek Panadero a while ago, you be the difference. Okay? We be the difference, not simply doing something that is different. Next slide. Yan. That wraps up my presentation from the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. Thank you very much. Hope we can see you, we can talk to you. The communication is open. The Cabinet Secretary, Leoncio Ivasco, our USEC, Gloria Mercado, and the other members of the OCS are really your partners for these particular endeavors. We have, this is what you call action beyond politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ASEC Bruto, for articulating the initiatives under the Office of the Cabinet Secretary. May we invite now ASEC Chris Ablan of the Presidential Communications and Operations Office. ASEC Ablan handles a program, is a program director of the Freedom of Information program of the Philippines. May we give a round of applause to ASEC Chris Ablan.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon. I have 10 minutes, so I'll make this quick. I have 3 goals for this afternoon. First goal is to convince all of you over here, whether you're from LGU, CSO, or from media or academe, to ask questions using the Freedom of Information program. 2 is to convince the local government units to pass their respective FOI ordinances. And 3, if there are no LGUs represented here, that the present NGOs and CSOs convince their local governments to pass an FOI ordinance. And my measure to see if I succeeded with my 3 goals is with your applause at the end of my talk. All right, so let's begin. In the scheme of things, in the scheme of participatory governance and open government, where does FOI come in? Within the next 2 days, you will be listening from national government as well as from CSO partners on how citizens can participate in the budget process, how the citizens can participate with other projects of government. But in order for us to be able to have meaningful engagement, citizens must be equipped, correct? And if citizens are not equipped with the proper knowledge, with the proper information, any dialogue, any form of participation is useless. And that's where FOI comes in. Because FOI is a tool for citizens, for government workers, for the academe, to access the information that government has in order for them to use it in having meaningful dialogue when it comes to passing the budget, approving a particular project of government, whether national or local. Now, you might be saying, well, you already have the FOI program in the national government. There's no need for FOI in the local government. I'm here to prove you wrong. In actuality, FOI is local. People need local information. And I'll show you some slides. Next slide. Up on the screen is the top 3 most requested information from the Department of Budget and Management. And you look at number 3. Number 3 is people want to know about the allocation of the internal revenue allotment. Where is the IRA going? How is it? What are the projects? So that's for DBM. It's in the top 3 most requested information from the Department of Budget and Management. Local information. Next slide. This one is from NEDA. The number 1 requested information from NEDA, regional development plans. People want to know what is the plans of the Regional Development Council for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. Because people want to know local information. Third example. This is the DILG. The second most requested information from the DILG is list of all approved assistance to disadvantaged municipalities. So, Sir Richard and Yusek Panadero are here, and they would be pleased to see that ADM, or well, now it's rebranded to Local Government Financial Support, or LGFS, is actually the second most requested information. People want to know how to access ADM. People want to know how to access LGSF or LGFS. So there, FOI is local. And hopefully for the next 7 minutes that I have, I'll be able to convince you to pass your respective FOI ordinances. Next slide. All right, in order for me to convince you, I have to show you that we were able to implement it properly. And we were able to implement it properly because we were given an executive order signed by the President almost 2 years ago. Executive Order number 2, series of 2016, is the Freedom of Information Executive Order. And it just means that every Filipino has access to any document considered public record. That is the basic thing. If you have in your possession a document considered a public record and it is requested from you, you are obliged, if you are a government agency, to disclose that information. It's that simple. Next slide. Okay. And so for the last year and a half, you were able to convince national government agencies to comply with the executive order of the President. We are very proud that 100% of national government agencies were able to produce their respective FOI manuals. This just means that any citizen can go up to any government agency, ask for its FOI manual, and follow the particular guidelines and rule, and ask for information from that agency, 100%, all 189 national government agencies. Next is GOCCs. We haven't performed that well for GOCCs, so 65% compliance. For SUCs, we have 79% compliance. And for local water districts, because they're still considered under the coverage of the executive order, we have 33% compliance. So our goal for the Project Monitoring or Management Office, or PMO, is to prioritize on the NGOs last year, and this year we will be prioritizing the GOCCs and the local government units. Next slide. All right, so as you already know, the executive order only applies to the executive branch. National government agencies, GOCCs, SUCs, and local water districts. It does not include Congress, the judiciary, constitutional commissions, and yes, local government units. We can only encourage local governments to pass their respective FOI ordinances. Next. All right, so we encourage local governments to have their own FOI ordinances. And there are already existing FOI ordinances scattered around the country. And last December, we had FOI awards, and we awarded 2 local government units from Region 1 for being the FOI champions for the LGU level. For the city, it's the LGU of Lawag City, and for the province, it's the LGU of Ilocos Norte. So hopefully, after this, the Bacolod Regional Dialogue, we're able to convince LGUs from Region 6 and 7 to pass their respective FOI ordinances so that we can award you at the end of the year in the next FOI awards. Next. All right, so the main provisions of an FOI ordinance are on screen. You have to have a provision on general rule on access to information. Of course, there are exceptions. Availability of the statement of assets and liabilities and net worth. Protection of privacy. A provision on the procedure. How much are you going to impose as fees? Incidentally, in national government, we do not impose fees for asking information. However, we do allow government agencies to impose reasonable fees for photocopying, printing, or maybe freight charges. Notice of denial, what are the remedies in case of denial, the need to manage and keep records, what are the penalties, and the creation or designation of an FOI office. In the national government, the PCOO was designated by the executive as the lead implementing agency for freedom of information. That is the program that Ted mentioned I administer. Next slide. All right. So, if your LGU or if your CSO is interested to push for a FOI ordinance, you can actually download a template in Word format, which you can already copy and paste and replace Lawag City with Bacolod City or Negros Occidental, what have you. And it's already accessible at foi.gov.ph FOI.gov.ph/resources. Our website is direct to the point. If you need other resources or guidance on how to implement an FOI ordinance, it's all there. We held an FOI summit last December, and we asked experts in FOI or access to information from India and the UK and Canada to share their experience. It's also downloadable. So if you want to learn about access to information, simply visit our website, foi.gov.ph. We have briefers translated into the different languages and dialects. Our FOI briefers can be read in English, Filipino or Tagalog, Ilonggo, Hiligaynon, Bisaya, and Ilocano. I think it's translated into 7 dialects. So for those of you who want to download it and photocopy it and spread it everywhere, you're by all means welcome. Next. Okay, so I was just informed by Director Richard that the ADM is no longer the name. But in order to encourage LGUs, we are trying to show the carrot or incentivize the passage of an FOI ordinance. It worked well for us in the national government because in the national government, we required agencies to upload their FOI manuals on their transparency seal in order for them to get their 2017 performance-based bonus. And that's the reason why we were able to get 100% compliance. We are talking with the Office of Director Richard Villacorta and Yusek Panadero to include passage of an FOI ordinance in the criteria for granting local government financial support as well as a criteria to get your seal of good local governance. So SGLG and for the LGSF. Also, hopefully to get to the transparency seal. Now, I know what's in your mind. Sasabihin nyo, ASEC, but you already have the full disclosure policy program or the FDPP. It's already in our website. Yes, that's good. That's called proactive disclosure. That proactive disclosure is only one way. FOI is there for us to listen to our citizens of what information is beneficial for them. See, the problem, proactive disclosure is good. Proactive disclosure is transparency seal and full FDPP. Meaning to say the information that is held by government is already disclosed to the public. That's good, but it's only one way. And FOI is a good listening tool. Because only through, for example, the first slides that I showed you, your agencies are able to find out what information is relevant to citizens. Because there might be a disconnect. Information that government believes is important might not be information that citizens are actually feel are important. And FOI is a tool for us to listen. And so, while we have FDPP, while we have proactive disclosure, while we have transparency seal, we feel that FOI complements and supplements this whole program of accessing and engaging citizens in government. So, hopefully, while you have FDPP, while you have transparency seal, it's still good to have FOI because it all helps each other government in implementing policy. Next slide. All right, so this shows you the City of Lawag that received the FOI awards from Executive Secretary Medeldea, Secretary Andanar, and Chair Bernadette Herrera D. of the House of Representatives last December. Picture yourself 10 months from now, kayo na po ang mag-receive ng FOI awards for LGUs. Next slide. All right, so these are our contact details. So any question, I understand during our program, we have an open forum. You can ask me anything about FOI, exceptions to FOI later, or you can send me an email. I'd like to end by reiterating the importance of having a freedom of information program in your respective local government units. It tries to hit 2 birds with 1 stone. First, FOI is an access tool. It's an access tool of citizens to get information that is not normally available to them from government. And second, FOI to government is a listening tool. FOI is a tool for us in government, whether national and local, to listen to what is important from our people. And only when we know what's important to our people are we able to contribute in better policy making. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you, ASEC Chris Ablan. Well, we have been receiving a huge set of information from the discussions and presentations today. May we again invite ASEC Chris Ablan, ASEC Marlon Bruto. As mentioned by ASEC Chris Ablan, we will be proceeding to an open forum, and they will be joined by USEC Auster Panadero. So hold on to your questions. May we invite our three resource persons to come up the stage. We have provided a seat here for a panel. So at this point, we will have an open forum with our open government and participatory governance champions. Our three panelists here will entertain your questions. For those who will have questions, please proceed to the microphone. In the hall, we have microphones provided, and we request you to kindly state your name and your organizations clearly, because we have a documenter who is going to take note of it. And kindly make your questions brief and direct to the point.
Can we invite Yan?
Okay.
Yan,
Okay.
dito pa sa USA.
Okay.
Kasi nag-ano siya kanina.
ASEC Marlon Bruto suggested that we also invite the representative from USAID, if she is still around. Marian? Marian, you're requested to join in the panel. Okay, so yes, we have the first and second. Okay. Please address your question to who among our panel will respond.
Nelson Rinaldo Orduyo of Kilusang Pagbabago Antique. I'm directing the question to the ILG with regards to identification of priority project of the local support fund. As a practice, I suggest this will be a proposal based rather than allocating budget for local government and have a program of works for implementation, because of the experience I have. Once the budget reaches the municipality, then it is the municipal mayor who gives the priority projects to be funded by the allocation given from the LGSF. Like I want to say that instead of proposing it for irrigation projects or water impounding programs, it is only directed to the constructions of roads, even within the municipality, not for the roads to the farm to market. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po doon sa rekomendasyon. But let me just clarify a few things. Now, number one, the projects are really coming also from the proposal of the local governments. Meaning, when I say local governments, ito yung binanggit ni Richard kanina na local development investment plan. Na ang assumption ay ginawa ng local development council, na nandun si mayor at nandun naman ang representatives ng ibang sektor. Kaya lang, tama ho yun, yung proposal na yun ay nakabase sa isang alokasyon. Sapagkat kung open-ended naman, mahirapan din ang ating mga local government kung anong assumption ang gagawin, kung magkano ba talaga ang darating. So may formula po tayong sinusunod, nasang-ayon din yan sa DBM, kung paano natin i-allocate yung, at the end of the day, the amount of money that will be available for this particular program. Ngunit itong mga proyektong ito, siguro, tingnan natin yung kalagayan ng binanggit na LGU sa Antique. But in general, this comes from a set of projects identified as critical and vital in the operations of a local government. Kaya ho naisali sa local development investment plan. At kung napansin po ninyo, kung ano yung pinaglaanan ng pondong yun, I think ang guideline natin ngayon ay lalo yung 2017 and eventually 2018, hindi ho pwedeng ilipat yun sa kahit anong project. Kung ano yung napagkasunduan doon sa local planning, na sumang-ayon naman si Mayor at ang CSO, yun na ho yun. Kasi nakasulat po ito sa GAA, sa General Appropriations Act, at napakahirap hong ilipat sa kung ano pang proyekto. Nonetheless, we'll request our team in Antique to look into that particular problem.
Yes, can we proceed to the next question?
I would have 3 questions, but the third to the persons I would like to ask is not around there. So I'll just direct first on the FOI. My point on the FOI is, why are you not lobbying for a congressional law for FOI? There was already by Erin Tanyada, but it has not pushed through. That has been waiting there for about 10 years already. So I think, why are you not lobbying for that? That's the first question. I'll just finish with the second. Why are there, this is addressed to the DILG, why are there many local governments who are anti-kilusang pagbabago and who are even harassing and threatening the kilusang pagbabago, even violating the right to organize? We just want some answers.
Okay, so
Yes.
so for me, first for the FOI, and then I'll pass it on to you, Sec Panadero. Yes, the office is coordinating with PLLO and the LEDAC to end both houses of Congress. It's a commitment of the OGP to pass the FOI legislation. But the smart thing that President Duterte did, that the predecessors didn't, was he did not stop by just waiting on Congress to pass an FOI law. So sabi niya, kung ayaw niyo pumasa ng batas, gagawa ko ng executive order, maiwan kayong Congress na mahiya naman kayo Congress na hindi kayo pumapasa ng FOI. So hopefully, with the successful implementation of FOI in the national government, it pressures Congress to pass their the FOI law. And we need the help of the LGUs and civil society to continue pressuring their legislators, both in the House and in the Senate, to pass finally the FOI law. So I'll pass on the mic to Yusek Panadero.
Yes, Yusek.
Ay, may follow-up ba sa FOI?
Yes, I have a follow-up question first. But the passage of the FOI executive order has been very long ago. And there is, because if you pass the FOI congressional law, it will touch on the judiciary, it will touch on the legislative, and it will touch all aspects of government. While the FOI executive is only on the executive department. And that's the sad story of it. We don't have the FOI, so there is much corruption in the judiciary likewise. There is much corruption in the legislative likewise. We need the FOI that will affect everything.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
We will echo that sentiment to the Senate and the House when we attend their public hearing. But thank you very much na at least meron pong call for the passage of the FOI bill from the regions. Thank you po.
Okay, Yusek Panadero will address your question.
Yung nabanggit po, una, liwanagin natin, hindi ho pinagbabawal yung mag-organize. Ay talagang kailangan natin ang pag-oorganisa para lalo tayong may makasama sa ating mga programa. Pangalawa, yung harassment po ay kailangan nating malaman kung saan po ito para makorek natin ito kaagad. Ang aming pong usapan ng CABSEC at ng DILG ay kailangan nating itaguyod yung pag-oorganisa, lalo na ng kilusang pagbabago. Kaya po ang iba naming mga kasamahan ay aming pong inatasan na makipag-coordinate sa mga nagkilusang pagbabago groups para malaman kung ano ba at paanong paraan makatulong ang kagawaran doon sa mga nangyayari sa local level. So I think we need to correct wherever it is happening that there is harassment that's going on and look into that siguro paano natin yan matigil.
Yes, I know.
Okay, we'll take another
Just a follow-up statement. We empathize with the concerns of the people to have the FOI bill to be passed in Congress, at least to affect not only the executive department, but the entire bureaucracy. In fact, this is one of the programs, part of the PPR of the PGC. We are trying to endorse this kind of a bill. I don't know if I am correct, but there is ongoing proposal already in the Senate to have this bill approved. And if we are impatient, the President is impatient. So every effort is done to ensure that at the end of the day, we have the FOI. But the problem here is that really this is the turf of Congress. President cannot just muscle himself and enforce the issue to the legislative department. But we do that in a diplomatic manner because even the PLLO is also doing an effort to ensure that this FOI bill will be passed. That is the reason why Asik Ablan is here, to encourage everyone to articulate on this. Because if this is already the clamor of the people, then at least the representatives and the senators will be able to hear that really there is a need the FOI. Probably they are still on the denial stage, with due respect. But if really if there is a strong articulation of this effort, I think our people in the legislative department will answer on this and will respond on this. Thank you very much.
We just want the FOI that if the FOI would need the KP for strengthening the lobbying efforts, we could do that. We could help. Also, the good secretary asked me about the issue where it is. It is throughout. We have felt it in Cebu City, in Cebu Province, in Negros Oriental, in Negros Occidental, in Samar, in Leyte. Reports have been coming in about treatment of local government officers against our people. We are just telling that.
Siguro, ang maganda niyan ay we'll issue a advisory in consultation with CABSEC, Office of Participatory Governance, to clarify that matter, no, para maliwanag.
That would be very good, Secretary.
I don't know, kung may suggestion pa po kayo, I think we need to improve our coordination. We'll direct likewise we will request sana na may meeting lang bawat regional office para mapagkasunduan kung ano ba ang...
We have improved our relationship with Regional 70 ALG.
Sige.
So, we just want to state that the kilusang pagbabago is a recognition of the inertia of the government in some aspect, the bureaucracy and everything, that there must be change, that the kilusang pagbabago is there to look into these things. And we are not there to run for election or for whatever. We just want change.
Ay, maliwanag din po yun. Napresenta po yan sa cabinet cluster at I think si Asek Marlon was there and that's been made very clear.
Well, I believe Yusek Panadero was able to properly address that question. Maybe go now to the third question.
Good afternoon. I'm Wina Hera from UP Cebu. We'd like, of course, to commend, the initiatives of the government for this, open government and transparency, particularly partnership with the civil society. The question is, participatory governance is always a very tricky concept. Now, I'd like to really clarify what is the basis or the cluster, the cabinet cluster composition, like with the broad bureaucracy that we have, and of course we are operating in this whole of government approach, which is very much targeted for integrated response by the government. What is the basis for the selection of those very few identified members of the cabinet? And the link to that would be based on what we did early this morning. You know, like, why only those 4 agencies who were, you know, sort of like brought to our attention for our feedback? And they're not even, one of them is probably not even in the list. So there's a bit of inconsistency in terms of who have been identified in the cluster composition, as well as those who have been brought to us. And then, so what's the basis of those if we are actually to address a more integrated response to governance, which would, of course, ultimately link to our whole-of-nation approach, which is the inclusion of our civil society. We're actually talking about 280,000 registered CSOs in the country, which was presented by Code NGO. Now, apart from the fragmentation of our local plans, we are very aware of the hyper-fragmentation of our civil society. You know, we run across this broad spectrum of, you know, ideologies from among our civil society representatives. How do we then, what are the institutional mechanisms available in the selection of members of civil society, which is the twin of participation, is representation? How do we then choose from among these equally valid sentiments from our civil society to actually represent in participatory forms? Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Asek Bruto.
Thank you very much for the question. Now, when I am part of the drafting of the Executive Order number 24, and it was deliberated upon, and even asked all the agencies to make comments on how it should be, each cluster should be composed. And there is an initial list of the agencies, concerned agencies, that we believe are relevant insofar as promoting participatory governance. That's the reason why the regional chairman of the cluster is the DILG, because it has direct and constant coordination and communication with the people, because our beneficiary is really the people. So, and then the DBM, of course, that is the leading department in terms of the OGP, the Open Government Partnership. So we try to discuss what are these departments that should be included. And at the end of the day, it's Executive Secretary that made the last and final version of the Executive Order. So the presumption is, after all these deliberations, all the agencies agreed that this should be the composition of the participatory governance cluster. But again, in order that this will not really be considered to be an exclusive listing, we made sure that there is a provision there that if in case a department would be needed to give support to a particular program that is being advocated by the cluster, then we will invite, or for purpose of discussion, for purpose of implementation, or even for purpose of monitoring the programs. So even if you have the listing there, it's not actually exclusive. So it doesn't stop there insofar as inviting other, even resource institutions like state universities. You have the NDCP. Now you have to remember that what we are trying to advocate here is not simply development. The framework today is development and security, DevSec. So we invite the NDCP and other resource institutions like the DAP, Development Academy of the Philippines, to ensure that we cover the discussion insofar as a particular program or activity. Now, with regard to the how we can involve the CSOs, right now, if my recollection is correct, we would like to have the inventory of all the CSOs and the capacity of each CSO. So that, for example, I've been talking this to the public, that if in case the program to be articulated or implemented by the government is about capacity building, there's more of educating the people. So we will identify the CSOs that have the expertise and specialization really to educate and to capacitate the people. So we have this inventory, and right now I would like also to make mention that the implementing rules on the accreditation of individuals, including that of the organizations, to be part of the Office of the Participatory Governance Programs, even the PGC would be issued, so that once and for all, everything is clarified on how the approaches, the processes, the steps, on how one can really participate, because this is the end of our discussion to be able to tap really the people that can deliver improvements and, of course, the needed outcomes when it comes to participatory governance. So hopefully, the next few days, we will be making such announcement, and the PCOO actually is really very, how you call this, helpful in so far as disseminating this information. Thank you so much.
Siguro po to add rin po, there was a
Yes,
question
Marian.
on why only these 4 agencies, why only these 6 programs were brought down here in Bacolod. Now the process po of developing the phase of the roadmap, as I've explained earlier in my presentation, we already have a phase 1. So all of these initiatives are at the back po. There's a gallery walk showing all of these first 14 initiatives under the phase 1 of the roadmap, all sourced from already existing national action plans, which has been developed just last year. So one is the Philippine Development Plan, 2017 to 2022. There's a chapter there, Chapter 5 on people-centered, efficient and clean delivery of public goods and services. Under its results matrix, there are already identified programs and targets from 2017 to 2022. So those which are related and are aligned with the mandate of the PGC in enhancing the citizens' participation in governance, we already sourced that out. The PDP development process is also has been separately done. They also went around, conducted separate regional consultations. We have also attended several of those consultations. And the second plan, which we anchored on in terms of developing the phase 1 initiatives of the PGC roadmap, is the Philippine OGP National Action Plan. The process of OGP is very similar to what we're doing now in the crafting of the phase 2 of the roadmap. So the process for identifying agencies to whom we will send the call is based also on previous public consultations. So when we were doing, since 2011, since we started doing OGP consultations at the local level, there have been clamor to include frontline service delivery programs and lifeline services under participatory governance or national action plans of government. So from there, may mga lumabas po na gusto nila sendan si DepEd, si DA, si DOH, si OCD. Ito po yung mga ahensya na pinadalhan namin. We sent more than 20 calls for commitments to more than 20 also identified government agencies from previous consultations, all of which were proposed by citizens participating in these kinds of forum din po. Some were proposed through TWG meetings with other agencies. Some proposed during cabinet cluster meetings when we presented the process to our principal. So yun po yung naging proseso paano na-identify yung sinendan. And from these more than 20 agencies na pinadalan po namin ng call, ito po yung mga nagre-respond so far as of today. But we will be conducting these consultations and we're following up with all of these agencies whom we sent the call to. Sa mga susunod na legs, for sure madadagdagan pa po. Meron na pong actually may nagpasa po kagabi, hindi na lang po namin naisama sa consultation ngayon because of resource limitations. Pero definitely sa Gensan, mas dadami pa po ito. And thank you very much po for, maganda po yung discussion kasi natin kanina dun sa breakout group natin. Thank you po for actively providing us your inputs on the design and on the design of the program and of the indicators that the agencies are proposing for the roadmap. Yun po yung kwento, bakit ito lang po yung naipresent sa inyo as of today. And I also just want to add that aside from ASEC Marlon shared that they are creating a CSO directory, we are also going to roll out a participatory governance cluster mapping survey. We are mapping out existing participatory governance efforts under the Duterte administration in terms of policies, in terms of programs, in terms of areas, in terms of CSO accreditation, because CSO representation and accreditation is a big policy issue po for all of us. Sino bang nag-accredit? Paano ba yung accreditation process? Gaanoon po, saan ba nagpapa-accredit? Ito pong yung yung i-roll out po naming survey will be serving as baseline information on existing policies and practices para mas mapag-usapan po siya ng ating mga principals pagdating naman po sa cluster. Then we can recommend policy actions care of the cabinet and pwede rin po policy action by the President. So yun po yung ilan sa mga updates na ginagawa po namin sa Cluster Secretariat. Hope na satisfy po yung mga questions niyo, ma'am.
Yes, Yusek.
Maraming salamat doon sa katanungan, yung aspeto ng membership. I think nasagot yun ng mga kasamahan natin. Pero ang pagkaintindi ko rin ay may iba pa bang paraan upang magkaroon lalo ng dialogo ang highest policy making body, which is Cabinet Cluster, as well as the civil society on the ground. So, ito yung aming pinag-usapan ni Asek Marlon na baka imungkahi natin sa PGC na magkaroon ng regular dialogue yung mga CSO groups in every region with the Participatory Governance Cluster. Para regular yan, para hindi ma-miss out yung mga issue ng bawat area. Sa ngayon ho kasi, alam nyo naman siguro ito, mayroon tayong National Anti-Poverty Commission. Ang nire-represent noon 14 basic sectors. Farmers, fisher folks, urban poor, may ganun po. Sektoral po yun. So ang bit-bit lang, issue ng sektor. Ngunit alam din natin, ayon sa plano, pinaliwanag kanina, kailangang area-based. Kayo ito. Area specific kasi yung issue sa Region 3 is different from Region 7, different from Region 6. Mahirap po yan basta na lang i-gloss over. So kailangan talagang may mekanismo. So ang isang paraan, kung pwede din ninyo mapag-usapan, at pwede bang mayroong mga area CSO councils or groups na ito yung kadayalogo ng ating participatory governance cluster. Para area specific, sektoral. At yun talaga ang bigyan ng diin ng pag-aaral ng OP, ng kung anumang ahensya ng pamahalaan. So, we'll invite your thoughts on that, but we'll certainly consider that as part of the moving forward on how to strengthen further our dialogues.
Thank you to our panelists. We're going to take one more question. Yes, one last question.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Excuse me. I'm Frank Carbon of the PCCI. The PCCI, Panay, Negros, and Cebu have 3 recommendations. I hope you will take this very seriously. Today, the private sector participation in our development council is only 25%. 75% public. We feel we should dapat equal voice in the development council. And for the development councils are developed for the communities, for the improvements of life. So dapat we should have equal voice naman in our development council. Please take a look at this. How can you increase our participation to 50%? That's number 1. Second, if the chair of the development councils, the public sector, dapat ang sectoral committees, private sector naman ang ma-chair, no? From infrastructure, social, economic, and debate. Para we have voice at the lower level also. That's number 2. Number 3, I don't know how you're gonna do this, but siguro ay kung pwede circular, department circular o law nga, dapat if you're a businessman with mayor's permit, you'll be issued a mayor's permit if you're dapat mag-member ka ng chamber para you'll have your voice can be heard also through the chamber. Some countries, I remember siguro, Germany, no? You can only have your business license kung you're a member of the chamber, business chamber. So that how small you are, your voice can be heard at the top through the chamber. So tatlo, let's have 50-50 equal voice. Kami naman, if the chair is the public sector, kami naman the sectoral committee, allow us to chair it, then study kung pwede all businesses dapat member ng chamber. No? Hindi sila pwede siya ng mayor's permit kung hindi sila member ng chamber. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yes, Yusek, you want to
On the matter
address
of 25% po, that really requires an amendment in the local government code. So I would really suggest this group comes up with, as part of the discussion here, comes up with a strong position, resolution, whatever, to request Congress to amend this particular provision. Kami, actually, tamang-tama lang ito kasi ang local government code nire-review ng Senate Committee on Local Government. In fact, kung mahabol po ninyo through the National Competitiveness Council, there is already a bill in the Committee of Senator, I think, Angara, to address these particular issues on participation, lalo na yung business competitiveness provisions of our laws. So pwede po yan. Pwedeng isama ni Senate ng mga senador yung panukala na dagdagan na yung, wag na yung 25%, but even more than that. On the matter of the chairmanship of the committees, I believe this is a local decision lang ito. So doable talaga po yan na pag nagkasundo yung local development committee, yung chairman ng mga subcommittees nila, they can agree as to who should lead that. And I would believe the economic committee is the better, those who are in the better position to lead that are the businessmen themselves. No? On the other side of the planning part, as I know this, yung kunyari, pinag-usapan natin infrastructure, there is really on the road networks in a province, the chambers are really part of the planning process. Kasama talaga sa ating pagbuo yan. Kung yung iba dito are not familiar with this, eventually through your chambers, we have reached out on the preparation of our local road network development plan. Ang philosophy lang natin, yung networks na ito, ng road networks, ay ang mga negosyante ang nakakaalam kung saan talaga dapat ito dumaan. Kasi yun yung from the production site to their markets and to the ports. On the third point, on dapat mag-member ng chamber. I cannot think immediately of a mechanism to do that other than a local, and the mayors are here, perhaps they can comment on that as well. But that's a local action po. Might be overreaching from national government to require that at this point in time, no? Na yung mayor's permit ay para lamang doon sa member ng chamber. Hindi naman lahat ay member ng chamber po. No, that's a...
Yes, can we get a very quick reaction before we end?
Ay, shout mo lang. Ito na. Yusek, we're very glad that project of DILG, the Local Road Network Development Plan. But I think it must be a component of the comprehensive land use. So in short, land use plus transport plan, they have to come together to avoid Metro Manila problem and Cebu problem, etc. No, I think if you can, do something about it, that the land use and the road network should come together as one plan. Please, consider that suggestion.
150% agree. In fact, I think, baka alam nyo naman ito, I think it was only last year, mid-last year, na kompleto na ang ating mapa on the hazard maps of all our local governments in the country. The provinces are supposed to update now their what we call the physical framework plan, which is the basis of the land use, the CLUP.
Yes.
We have a big challenge there. Kasi ang existing CLUPs ng mga munisipyo, with all due respect to the mayors here, may not yet be consistent with the physical framework plan of the province. So mayroon talaga tayong challenge yan. Kasi yung iba, because of their land use, they make investment, lalo na infrastructure decisions, downstream of a watershed of a river, which is not consistent with the land use in the upstream. So nagtayo tayo ng, and this is happening in some parts of the country, na nagtayo ng mga river protection downstream, hindi naman complemented by similar infrastructure upstream. So bali, wala din si river protection kasi yung tubig, baha, pasok pa rin doon sa downstream towns. Now, the key there is what a body called PILUC, the Provincial Land Use Committee. That reviews all the CLUPs of every town in a province. I would flag that to you because if I would imagine that is the body where everyone should really be paying attention to and be part of that process of reviewing the CLUPs.
Yusek, I hope you can help us on this because there's a lot of LGUs. We're supposed to review and update our CLUPs every 10 years. That's correct, no? There's a lot of LGUs, 15 years, 20 years, hindi pa tapos ang CLUP up to date. Can the DILG help on this? Review, make a list, no? And really, I don't know how we're gonna push them. The business sector, gusto naman, halo kung pwede lang every 5 years, you have your CLUP. So that our planning also, we can, very, very hard to plan 10 years, no? Pero kung every 5 years, we know the direction, no? Of our land use, transport, everything, then we can accordingly plan also our expansion of our businesses. So please, can we take a look at the CLUP of our cities and municipalities? May around 17 years, 20 years, 25 years, no? Hindi pa sila update.
Sige po. At the minimum, we will come out again with a series of advisories.
Please,
asking LGUs to update because that's an ongoing concern really together with HLURB. But
yes,
the
yes.
more important message I think that you're saying is dapat kasama kayo doon sa pag-review na yan. And we fully agree with you and we will remind our LGUs to make sure that you're participating in such a review process. For the simple reason that I think land use is economic and it is also a commercial issue. The other side to that, at ito, marami rin ito sa mga LGUs natin, kaya nahirapang matapos yung CLUP because it really requires technical knowledge, which is not generally present in all our local governments today.
Right.
So,
Yes, tama,
baka ibalik po nila sa inyo and we hope the private sector or the business sector will also complement, baka humingi rin sila ng tulong sa inyo. Baka kung may mga engineers din kayo at may mga staff na pwedeng tumulong,
open arms.
make
We
them
welcome.
available.
We'll welcome it really, no? Okay.
Of course,
we
without
need it in our business planning and everything.
Pero ipahabol ko na, sana libre. Para
libre,
matulungan natin na mabuo kaagad yan ng
Our
CLUP na yan.
participation sa Development Council, libre na eh.
Yan.
No? What we know at the end of the day, the business sector or the community, beneficiary man kami sa Bar Airport eh.
Yeah.
You know,
Sige, so we'll reiterate that.
Baka yung CLUP dapat include guro sa Seal of Good Governance, something like that award.
It's
Pag wala
already-
ka CLUP, wala, nothing.
It is. However, we are not yet saying it must be updated. So, hinahanap lang, basta may CLUP ka. Baka
Hindi.
this year,
Updated
it has to
dapat.
be the updated one.
10
Because
years.
we cannot ask that before kasi
Very
dahil wala pa yung mga mapa. Prior to the maps of DNR, which was given mid last year, we're using 1:50,000 maps. Wala tayong magawa doon.
Yusek, alam mo na.
Today,
There's
it's 1:10
technology
already.
There's technology, may GIS, etc. We can do it na.
Ay, nako, okay po yung GIS, pero yung karamihan nating LGU, wala pa ho doon sa platform
Dapat
na yun.
i-post na sila, Yusek, no? Baka batuta ng kailangan sa kanila. No?
Yung iba hindi talaga.
Sige, thank you anyway. Thank
Sige.
you very much. Ha?
Thank you po.
You're playing to catch up ko na. Sige.
Okay, so thank you for all the participants who have provided their questions to our panel. We already have gathered some steps forward with this very brief interaction between our participants and our panel and officials from the government. May we give a round of applause to Marian, to ASEC Chris Ablan, ASEC Marlon Bruto, and to USEC Oster Panadero. We still have one session to go before we finally wrap up the day 2. So at this point, we will proceed to our second breakout session on identifying themes for sub-national commitment or plan for OGP and PGC. We will flash on the screen our groupings and